Last Saturday, I want to discuss the podcast that me and Gabe A did on the Hall of Game on the Oshay Vlogcast called Who Should Brothers Watch Out For in Corporate America? And I want to thank him for such an enlightening and informative podcast as a electrical engineer that transitioned into the tech industry. What it took for him to get to where he is and the knowledge and obstacles that he had to overcome, moving up and down and taking sometimes lateral positions or vertical positions involving moving upwards in corporate America. But I also want to talk about some of the subtle things that you will also find in my short stint in corporate America as an African American male. Now, corporate America, from my understanding in the 80s and 90s, black people who were high performers, this is according to my mother and my father, blacks who did very well for companies, they were rarely elevated to positions of senior management and high management. However, those blacks were then used, those that performed, they were those people who trained educated whites who came out of college. They trained them to eventually take their positions and become their bosses. As ludicrous as that sound, or how that sounds, that was the case. Some of you were alive during that period, and you can attest that you've heard this or experienced it. That's what blacks were typically used for at the time. High-performing blacks were used to know the system, educate whites coming out of college, and then those whites would eventually become their bosses or eventually phase them out of that position. That's kind of how blacks were used in many levels of corporate America. Now, such situations would result in a lawsuit. So that thing can't really happen as much anymore. In terms of some businesses that have nepotism or family businesses, that may happen in certain small pockets of America, but very rarely that's a big lawsuit. What happens now is, now that you have diversity and the playing field supposedly is more open, in comparison to the 80s, you're going to see a lot of, not a lot, but more black men in levels of management than before. Okay. Brothers who were performing very well at maybe like an entry level. Brothers who then perform better are in management. So those brothers who were in consideration of management in the past are now going to get those positions. Still, there is some hatred in that, right? And let me explain the situation. Those people who have been there before you, who are not black, or even those who are black, but those who are not black, you have outperformed them, and now you have got a management position, and they feel that they should have received it. This is the first situation. Or you are the black person that got a higher raise or salary, and you're new to an organization, and you're dealing with some people that have been there before you got there, and they're upset. And GABE A talked about both stipulations. In either case, your work ethic and your resume and things that you've done to prepare yourself for such positions is not your fault. It's not your fault that you got chose for those things, right? But there's two sides to every story. A lot of companies in today's world want to show that they're diverse. Companies brag about this. We are equal opportunity employer. Disney, Verizon. We don't judge based off race, creed, sexuality, or religion. But if you really think about it, a lot of people will elevate you in the positions hoping that you can't do the job. And then put who they want in those positions just to be able to say, well, we did give an African-American male a chance, right? Now, there are sometimes people put certain people in positions knowing that they can't do the job and they're going to underperform or banking on it. Not to say it always happens. But what happens when that person overperforms? This is something that happens with a lot of brothers out there in corporate America, a lot of black men. You not only meet expectations, you exceed them. Whether you go to school, I'll tell you a situation I've had at medical school. You're exceeding expectations amongst your own peers. But not everybody is proud of your success. One of the things you're going to deal with is some sly remarks. I've talked about this before. I remember I was having a discussion about, we're talking about women, and a guy shot a remark at me. He said, what do you know, man? You just deal with ghetto hoes. Now, I'm not going to talk about how that ended, but this is a guy that was doing very well in the first year, so was I. The guy knew my ability was just as good as his. I was outperforming him in certain classes, if not all across the board, and he was a good student, right? But see, that didn't matter because at the end of the day, all I knew was ghetto hoes. This is what I knew. In fact, just reducing me and what I've done just to a small pocket. Forget that I went to a predominantly white university. At one point, I went to UC Berkeley. At another point, reducing me back to this. In other words, you shouldn't be here. And see, this is what happens many times in higher academia, higher corporations. You are not supposed to be here, despite your proven track records. So you deal with snarly comments. One of my favorites is, man, you're just, I've never met a black person quite like you, man. Like, you're much different than other blacks that I've met. You speak differently than, some of the other blacks I've talked to. Now, that is an insult. It's an insult to injury. But in other words, you're not supposed to be on this level. Now, Gabe mentioned certain situations in which politely people are going to try you to get you into that energy, which is not professional. Now, if you're from the streets, if you're from the hood, people disrespect you. An emotional outburst is what they're looking for, just so they can say, aha, this guy has an anger problem. I told you he is the typical angry black male. And they'll set you up with nonchalant comments that are not really racist, but just so that you can be proven that, hey, he's not the guy for the job. When you are stuck with such situations, kindly smile, go directly to corporate, go to HR. Yes, it's snitching, right? And then you let HR handle that. Because I had a situation where a coworker did something like that with me. A coworker actually said something ridiculous to me and then went to corporate and told corporate, yeah, I said that to him, and then he said this. So the corporate came to me mad at the response I gave the person, although they went to corporate on me and told corporate what they did and they started it. So I was in trouble. Almost. So guys, in such situations, understand, especially if you're one of the few blacks there, you are a male, People do not expect you to perform well. And when you do perform well, you're still going to be judged many times that you are black, and you're going to get subtle situations. Now, if it's resolvable, like Gabe talked about, you can talk to people, try to resolve it. If it's not racial, like what I just mentioned, he recommends that, hey, is there a miscommunication going on? Is there a problem that we can resolve? Make sure that you get somebody that can verify that you've spoken to the person, the third party. Keep your paper trail straight, as he recommended. And then you basically can see if you can win this person over onto your side. If you can't win them over to your side, stay away from them. But just know, higher performing brothers will be targeted. And this is one of the reasons why I believe that you have so many black men who are in corporate America and then leave it. Black men who are in high academia and then leave it. Because the expectations, even when you hit it, therefore it doesn't count because you're not supposed to hit it anyway. And some of those things you're going to deal with. But this is what I also want to say in closing. Always remember you're learning skills for yourself that will help you in other parts of the world. I work for some very big corporations. I don't want to call any names. But those soft skills that I learned have helped transition me to be able to do many things I would never be able to do. And I wouldn't be able to do it efficiently as I would have if I had not worked for them. So just always understand that if you're a guy climbing up the ladder, these people are teaching you life skills that you can always use. And as a black man, every skill that you get is so important for you. So I wanted to just basically touch on that one. Thank Brother Gabe A for that. Guys, don't be discouraged. Working for micromanaging bosses, looking out for things and trying to catch you up here and there. It's a part of the game. But do what you're supposed to do. You know, keep your emails clean. Don't use the work phone and be watching twerk videos. Do everything that you're supposed to do. Guys, again, let me just make one last thing. The voting poll for the Negro Manosphere Awards is below at the pinned comment. Go ahead and go vote. It's right there. Thank you so much. And as you know, the buffoonery remains at an all-time high. I'm out.